housekeeping items on kind of what our current openings are and what you can all be looking at on SciHire. Okay. All right, can you guys see my screen? Cool. So just a few updates. We have some new items this year. We have 2 scholarship opportunities. The Power Your Education Scholarship, which we will award 10 students across the nation a $10,000 scholarship and an invitation to our leadership program this summer. To apply, it's all online, and you just need to submit a 30-second video of yourself basically explaining what the power of being understood means to you. We also have what's new this year, the First Generation Scholarship. So 5 students will win $10,000 scholarship per academic year for up to 3 years, so $30,000 total in scholarship. Same thing, apply online, and the deadline date is February 28th, so coming up here in a little bit. Just kind of a look at what our summer 2021 remaining openings look like. We do not have any more openings in Iowa, but we do have openings across the nation in Cleveland, Houston, McLean, San Fran, New York, etc. For interns and associate positions. Those deadlines to apply are coming up, and so if you have if you would like to apply, you can check out SciHire, but then also if you wanted to just send me your resume directly, I can route you to the location that you want to look at as well. We are going to be also at the Engineering Career Fair next week, both days, so come speak with us if you have additional questions. And like I said, our deadline to apply will be in SciHire on 2/19, and then all of our interviews will be held virtual this year as well. So we're hoping to host those virtually a few weeks following the deadline.
Hey, Alexis, real quick, two questions for you. I think there was one question in chat around, are those internships in San Fran and Virginia going to be in person, or are those, do we know, is it still kind of up in the air?
It still is up in the air. The firm has not made a decision yet. No matter what it will be, it'll be firm-wide for any intern across any line of business. So we're hoping that those decisions will be made within the next month and a half or so, but interviews will be conducted and offers will be extended probably prior to that decision. So that's kind of something that you'll have to think about as you're applying.
Thanks, Alexis. And it looks like you're answering my second question on this slide, so go ahead.
Okay. And then we do have internship openings for summer 2022. So candidates that are sophomores or students that have graduated or will be graduating December of 2022 or May of 2023, they can actually apply to our Campus Automation Challenge. So candidates that are selected will go through 2 rounds of interviews virtually, and those selected to participate in this program will engage with our risk consultants as coaches and mentors to automate a process in a virtual environment. So you'll use RPA and AI, and our risk leaders are actually developing certain use cases to identify technical capabilities that would align with the risk consulting practice. So this is an opportunity to be looped in, to be selected for an internship next summer with RSM. So this is listed on SciHire, which that's wrong. It should be deadline to apply is on SciHire. But 2/19 will be there next week to kind of talk more about this as well. I'm also hosting info sessions if you want to come, if you have questions. But feel free, I'll be on here all night tonight too. So if you do have anything, please let me know. But that's really all the housekeeping items I have for you. And then I'll kind of pass it over to Ellis and Jack for more of a technical talk.
Well, actually, we're going pretty far away from technical today, but I'll share out my screen. We went in a bit of a different direction with today's talk. There we go.
Awesome. All right, so if we just want to jump right into this, what we're going to be talking about today is going to have some minor technical elements, but the overall ideas that we want to talk about, what it's like to be in security consulting or in consulting as a whole, just because that's something that I know I personally had a lot of questions about when I was, first hearing about, various internship and job opportunities that were out there, and we wanted to clear up some of what consulting in security is and isn't. So let's just jump into this. So today we'll give an idea of who we are, both personally, and then what RSM is kind of like to consult with. But then we want to make the rest of the presentation pretty company agnostic. Like, this is going to be information that should hold pretty true for RSM or any other consultancy firm. Just what's it like to be in security consulting, and we're going to be talking about different types of penetration testing and security work you can do in the field, what it's like to have a career in the field, how you can prepare yourself now. One thing that I need to stress right away is that at any point, if you have any questions at all, please interrupt us. Let us know. If you want to just throw something in chat, I'll try and keep an eye on that and pause and address questions in real time. If I don't notice something in chat, unmute your microphone and scream at me, because otherwise I'll probably just keep soapboxing until we hit the end of the time today. So let us know if there's questions that come up as we go. But I think Ellis can take it away, give a little bit of background information about who we are, where we're coming from.
Yeah. I mean, like Jack put it perfectly, this is a talk that's meant to be kind of clarifying some of the questions that we hear people ask a lot, specifically about kind of what we do as a whole. And so, we want to make this a conversation. We're lucky to have a bit of a smaller group here. So like, please, talk to us. We just want to answer your questions. And like we said, we're not trying to like force RSM down your throat. We're just going to try and stay as, open to it as possible, just kind of answering the general questions. But as I say, I'm not trying to force RSM down your throat. Let's start with a little intro on RSM. The standard required stuff. RSM is a consultant company. We tend to focus on smaller clients. We're a 5th largest tax audit consulting firm in the US. We're global, among other things. There's a lot of different things I could rattle off, but this isn't the part that I want to spend a lot of time on. We have a lot of locations. Des Moines office is closest to all of you guys, but we have offices all over the country. I, for one, interned in Kansas City. I started my career in Des Moines, and now I'm located in Denver. So the opportunity for movement is both available and encouraged. And since Alexis had specifically said we don't have any opportunities in Des Moines, you can end up in DC, San Francisco, Houston, a lot of different places. So really cool stuff. If you're looking at a bit more large scale, we also have international locations. We don't have a ton of international security testing positions, but I believe that's in the works to be expanded currently, which is awesome. About us, my name's Ellis. I am an associate. I graduated from University of Kansas in 2019, computer engineering degree. I was the KU Information Security Club president and CTO. I went to a lot of the Iowa State CDCs, never made the podium, so that's super cool, but really love going there.
I'm, first of all, muted. Okay, there we go. I'm Jack Potter. I just graduated from Iowa State in 2020 in May. I'm recognizing some names and faces here, so you might recognize me from either Computer 230, 231, or IASG, where I stood in front of you and yelled about open source software quite a bit. Like we said earlier, any questions, shout them out, throw them in chat, we'll address them. But this will be, I think, a lot more useful for everybody if we can try and make it something of a conversation, just so we aren't, throwing out information that you already have or that you don't care about. So let us know which direction you want us to take things, and we will do our best to accommodate. But just moving right along, let's talk about penetration testing. Oh, I guess let's talk about legally, standard disclaimer. Don't, get caught breaking into something important and then say that we told you to do it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So penetration testing. Let's get into the types of penetration tests that you can do when you're working in security consulting. These are the kinds of things that we do on a daily, weekly basis here. You've got your standard internal and external penetration tests where you're, either starting inside a corporate network, trying to get to something sensitive, starting outside the network, trying to get in through the internet. You've got your web application pen tests where you just, are going after web apps, physical stuff, which is lots of fun. I've talked about that at ISG plenty of times, just legal breaking and entering. Social engineering is where I spend a lot of my time, just making malicious phone calls, sending phishing emails. You've got your wireless, mobile app, IoT, and reverse engineering, vulnerability scans, lots of, focus things there. You've got your red team assessments, which we'll talk about in a little more detail later. But yeah, a lot of opportunities. And one thing that's nice about consulting is that, while you can focus on a specific area, you get the opportunity to branch out into all of this. To address this question that just popped up in chat, at least in my time, I've worked on almost all of these with the exception of mobile app, IoT, and I haven't been doing any long form red team stuff, but everything else is stuff that just comes up as clients ask for it, as it comes up in tests. There's people who get to focus on specific areas and spend a lot of their time in one specific domain. But like I said, it's nice that you can move around a little, get experience with all kinds of things, and then decide where to focus on from there. So let's just run through a little bit more detail on all these, just so that you all have a little more background. External penetration tests, pretty straightforward. We start on the internet. We want to get into a corporate network. We want to see if there's any sensitive assets that are exposed to the web. There's, some common stuff that comes up here is DNS enumeration, Google dorking, which is lots of fun, using Shodan to find, all the resources that are associated with this company. A lot of poking at just various portals that they have exposed to the internet that they either shouldn't have exposed or don't know are exposed, and just trying to pivot into the network from there. A fair bit of password spraying, a lot of research and open source intelligence gathering goes into that. But just start on the outside, try and get in. Moving on to internals. This one, you start inside the network, typically with low or no privileges, and you just want to see if you can go from being just on the network to owning the network. Usually that looks like you're trying to own the domain controller, since in an Active Directory environment, that's essentially your ultimate win. Once you've got your domain admin, makes it a lot easier to find sensitive information, makes it a lot easier to say that you've compromised everything. People, these internals almost always tend to find a path to compromise. There's, several common paths, but there's, you're trying to find which one or several of those paths will get you there. And to address Nick's question in chat, Alice, have you ever done anything with industrial controls? I personally have not done anything.
Yeah. So we do a lot of different kinds of consulting. Some of that is ICS SCADA assessments. Those would be like industrial control systems, and SCADA is a long acronym that I don't care to even remember right now. But yeah, we do that kind of stuff. I wouldn't say it's anywhere near the Stuxnet kind of stuff. It's generally a bit more of consulting on how to configure things in the most secure way possible. We didn't actually talk about anything ICS typically because they kind of fall under different kinds of consultancy. But I know Martin in our Houston office has been doing more ICS SCADA pen testing and actually looking into like reverse engineering and whatnot. So that's a bit more of a specialty, to allude to the question that was asked earlier. If you're typically getting into ICS SCADA, that's a bit more of a specialty, whereas, these might be a little bit different.
Ellis, don't undersell yourself. I mean, 2 summers ago, 2019, you and me were in full fireproof suits, kneeling in the middle of a dust field in Texas, plugging into a jack next to an oil rig. So, I mean, we definitely do some ICS testing, but that, like Ellis said, is more of a specific client profile rather than, an internal, external, et cetera. Really, the type of work that we're doing for them is pretty, it would fall under one of those core competency areas. Usually it's like, okay, can somebody move from a corporate network into an ICS environment where all the fun stuff is located? And if they are able to, what's the impact, right? Are they able to do stuff, blow up, pipelines, or is it pretty limited? So
yeah, spike the water system. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Jack, back to you.
Yeah, so that's. I think we can move on from internal now to web apps, which if you remember from 230, 231, a whole lot of script alert one, just trying to find get something to pop there. Basically, you're just it's pretty much what it sounds like on the tin, right? You've got a web app, you want to try and break it in a way that the client cares about. That they're looking for, and what they're looking for depends typically on the client and on the app. And there's some the common attack techniques and common things that come up across lots of web apps. But if you're working on an e-commerce app, you're trying to see, hey, can I mess with the price that I'm going to pay for these goods or services? If it's in healthcare, can I get to sensitive data? Just anything public facing. Can I get stored cross-site scripting to run code in somebody else's browser? If Burp Pro were free, that would be wonderful. That's one of the great parts of consulting is, it took exactly one email for me to get a license for Burp Pro, and now I get to do web apps, with fancy tools, which is real nice. But yeah, just lots of fun stuff there. Social engineering. This is where I spend a lot of my time on a weekly basis. A whole lot of just lying to people on the phone. It's pretty much it. Lots and lots of, just introducing yourself as being from IT, being from a consultancy brought in by IT. You're from, whoever or wherever, it doesn't really matter. People want to be helpful. And if, you make them feel like they're, doing a good job of helping you, they're, helping out the company, they will start doing whatever you ask for, reading off sensitive information from their computer, telling you exactly, what vulnerable versions of software they're running, or just copying and pasting scripts into PowerShell for you. There's lots of fun stories from the social engineering front. It's a good time. Also a lot of phishing emails, as noted there. I haven't done any of it at all, but I know there's some people at RSM who've done some phishing via SMS. I refuse to call it phishing, or however. I'm not leaning into that paradigm of everything being ishing, but lots of messing with people remotely. A lot of fun. Moving on from social engineering, we have physical, which I'm looking forward to.
I figured I would share this recent phishing attempt that my girlfriend got, or smishing.
Yep.
Snapchat, your login, your one-time code is this. Message from Snapchat. Hey, someone just tried to log into your account. Please respond with the next code. New code. I thought it was incredibly well put together. It convinced some of my roommates even. Like, after we had started talking about it as being a phishing attempt, one of my roommates was like, no, this could probably be real. So,
dang, I haven't heard of that particular one, but there's definitely some degree of I've seen that in wasn't one of our coworkers, but just some interesting case studies of people pulling off something like that, where they either convince you that you either share this next code with me because I am the company, or one of the old standbys is, hey, I used to have your phone number way back when, and I used it to sign up for some service, and they're not letting me change to my current phone number unless I can verify this code or whatever, and then next thing you know, you're sharing two-factor authentication codes that you shouldn't be. So fun stuff there. Now we're on the physical penetration tests. Also, a whole lot of fun. Looking forward to the world going back to something approaching normalcy. So physical pen tests can be a thing again. Usually your ultimate goal with this is to show that you could have had access to either sensitive resources within a building, or very commonly that sensitive resource is a networking closet or a server room, just showing that you could have plugged into the network or grabbed some hard drives, or stuck a malicious device somewhere that it doesn't belong. The Iowa courthouse thing is a good question. That, at least from my perspective as a tester, when physical pen tests become a thing again, I know that I am going to have some incentive to really lean on other people in my company and at the client to double and triple check that nobody's asking us to test a resource that they do not actually have the right to order a test on. That's for sure. Definitely don't want to get picked up by the sheriff's office breaking into a courthouse. And that's something that I know ISG has had some talks about in the past, and it's something I could talk about for a couple hours. So we should probably just move on before I start down that path and let Ellis take back over here for a little bit.
Yeah. So next up is wireless. This is another kind of on-site gig where we go on and essentially test the wireless network of it. According to Jack, you guys have done some labs on it, cracking WPA handshakes. Pretty straightforward attack vector. It's something that we perform almost every single time. It's also really fun to kind of travel on site, and you get to enjoy a free lunch. And you must enjoy the good old Wi-Fi pineapples. Those kinds of, while we don't exactly use pineapple specifically, it's the exact same kind of tools that we use on a regular basis. Next up, mobile app, IoT, reverse engineering. It's a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. These are certainly a bit more rare, but they're starting to become more and more frequent as these things are becoming more prevalent in our clients' environments. I know mobile apps are getting considerably less rare. IoT and reverse engineering are still pretty hit or miss depending on the client. One of our guys was sent I think it was like an IoT lawnmower a couple weeks ago, and he literally took it apart and was working on finding vulnerabilities on it. And so even though they are rare, they're certainly cool and fun. And then the last one is red team assessments. These are essentially full scope, everything above that we've talked about, a start to finish attack on an organization like a real attacker would, with an emphasis on stealth and evasion rather than identifying everything. There's really no restrictions. You set up your infrastructure. You try and break in externally. You send phishing emails, and then from there you try and get in and exfiltrate sensitive data. These ones are typically a lot longer, on the typically weeks or months versus only a couple days, and a lot more in depth. I saw that there was a comment. I can't read it though because I'm sharing my screen. Moving on, consulting kind of as a career. So those are all of the things that security testing professionals kind of do on a day-to-day basis. That's what our job is. That's what other security consultants do kind of across the industry. That's kind of the standard of it. But this is kind of, this section is geared more towards talking about what it's like to be a consultant and kind of how all of these things are, how all of these things operate, not just RSM, company agnostic, really just how the world works. The end goal of just being a consultant is being with a client and trying to help them meet their goals, whatever that is. It can come down to a lot of different things, management consulting, technology, managed IT services, tax audit, financial management, compliance, security testing. There's a whole list of consulting jobs out in the world. We're obviously the last and the coolest one, security consulting. One of the big things about consulting, I wanted to make a big old slide about this, is that communication is extremely important. Regardless of if you're the best hacker in the world, but you can't actually explain things in a way that's digestible to the client or anyone else, then at the end of the day, it may not be as useful as someone who is, who can. Communication is extremely important, talking with clients, discussing results, etc. Now, security testing. Like we had kind of alluded to earlier, we have a lot of different specialties, internal, external, technical stuff, operations, physical and social engineering tend to go hand in hand because that involves talking and just kind of the analysis of people. Web apps and mobile apps tend to have a lot of similarities, so people may associate those different things. Wireless is sort of on a league of its own, cloud, and then red team, which isn't really a specialty, it's just more of a broad, a bit of a broad thing. In all of these different things, we also occasionally get to do like tool development. It's always encouraged, research just kind of in general. We do have specific groups within RSM that do research more as kind of their specialty. So in the sense of Jack and I are penetration testers. And so we do pen tests pretty much day in and day out. But there was a former member of your guys' club, Jacob Moody, the wizard. He is part of the research and innovation group, and 70% of, or 75% of his time, roughly 3/4 of the time, he's literally just working on the next and greatest, coolest things in security. Like we obviously tend to do a bit more pen tests, but there are other people like him that tend to focus a bit more on research as well. And then obviously Twitter is a huge part of this. Just in general, Twitter is kind of a huge part of pen testing, funny enough. The R&D group develops a lot of things. It's kind of a hit or miss basis as of right now. Typically, I would say it's more based on tooling or techniques rather than searching for, zero-day exploits or something like that. That would be working on an implant to send to a client to get a shell on their machine or something like that, rather than, like searching for an exploit on a target system. At least that's from my knowledge. Yeah.
Yep, Ellis and I can expand on that a little bit more. Internal tooling groups that are focusing specifically on O-days in software are very few and far between, and typically where you find those are going to be either in very large organizations who are looking for O-days in their own products. They're going to be at EDR and antivirus vendors that are basically testing the efficacy of their products, and then nation state level actors basically that are hiring people to build their own, exploits for use in offensive operations. And then there are companies that are known as like gray hat companies. So basically they're doing the same type of work where they are specifically focused on researching O-days, and they go and sell those to governments basically for very large payouts. Those are really the only groups that are doing specific O-day research by and large. There's definitely independent researchers that are doing a lot of that as well, and that's a big chunk of where newly dropped exploits come from, are just independent people kind of doing it for fun. Sorry, I have a baby on my lap. But all in all, like Ellis mentioned, the vast majority of our tooling, and that's going to be true of most consulting practices you see, is focused more so on capability enhancement. So like Ellis mentioned, developing a C2 agent, command and control agent, that is able to bypass all EDR solutions, right? So basically we can drop an implant. We don't have to worry about antivirus. We're using the latest, greatest techniques that allow us to bypass stuff, to run what code we need to grab credentials off the box, et cetera. Or maybe we're taking a tool like Minicast and we're slicing and dicing it to pull out the functionality we need and allow us to evade those same controls. So that really is how we focus our development instead of on the O-day exploits. There was one other question, Ellis, if Ellis and Potter want to address. It says, I'm an MIS major who wants to minor in business technology consulting. Is there one part of consulting that is better than another?
That's a complete matter of perspective there. I mean, like consulting in general is more of it's a career path, but what you do within consulting is entirely up to you. The business information systems side of consulting, while that's not necessarily the technical security side that we're a part of, it's certainly an important part of just kind of the general consultant lifestyle and kind of what we do company to company, et cetera. Those jobs obviously differ from what we do, where it would be something like integration of technology into our client systems, helping them make sure that all of their technology works, is functional, and is operational to the best degree and suits their needs. So yeah, like naturally the jobs would be different. We take a much more technical approach. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. Like I said, it's just sort of, what's your preference and what do you like to do? Both are equally important. We have, most consulting firms have kind of all forms of that. So, okay, moving on. We're actually pretty close to the end of our presentation. Now, the testing life cycle. Naturally, different tests take different amounts of time just due to the scope, the complexity, just the nature of it. They range from a couple hours to a couple months. It's just kind of up to how it all works. internals, externals, they tend to be a couple days or, 1 to 2 weeks for really big clients. Physical social engineering, a couple days. If you're on site, maybe just a day or two. And then it kind of scales up from there to red teams, which are 3 to 4 months, because you're really trying to take a very, very slow, tailored approach to the client. Naturally, larger clients equals longer testing time. And so we at RSM tend to focus on smaller middle market clients. And so that would be something like, a hometown Iowa bank or something along those lines, rather than Fortune 500s. We do have some of those, but typically, since we service smaller clients, the life cycles are bigger. Just kind of across the industry, if you're servicing larger clients, you're on them for longer periods of time because of the complexity, the size of the scope, et cetera. That's just kind of how it works. And so, I'll be on a client that's, a couple days, and then I'm currently on one that's, I think, 3 months long. So it's just kind of up to the gods and what you get. But that parries pretty well into travel time. Naturally, just because of COVID, we're all remote. But when the world rights itself, we'll be back on site doing some of the work that we do. Naturally, something like physical testing and wireless testing is entirely on site just because it needs to be. You can't test physical infrastructure if you're off site. Internal penetration tests tend to be kind of 50-50, whether or not you go on site, depending on what the client wants. Externals and mobiles and web apps and all that tend to be remote, just typically because that's the whole design of it. You're testing infrastructure over the World Wide Web, that kind of thing. And so again, it just kind of depends on what you guys go to. I support that. Please live in Denver. We need more people like me out here. Woo! And then one of the huge perks of travel is Marriott and airline points are just awesome. I worked here for a year and a half-ish before kind of the world shut down for COVID, and I'm up to an absolutely ridiculous amount of Marriott points, which is a huge perk. Nick, to answer your question, clients in parallel, typically no. That's a lot of complication that, frankly, you shouldn't have to do. There are specific instances where you might have overlap. For example, you have to do a 2-hour remediation testing, and you do that while you're servicing another client, doing another engagement, something like that. But yeah, typically there's no reason to overlap. The overlap kind of comes on the ends of clients. So for example, when you're finishing a client and starting a new one, sometimes those sort of overlap a little bit in terms of, writing the reports, getting kickoffs started, et cetera. But in terms of actual technical testing, you're typically just kind of going from client to client depending on how long the engagement is. Ooh,
Ellis, what is this 80% on-site for cloud?
I was actually talking to Wes about that. Funny enough, the cloud team tends to go on site not because the cloud stuff is on site, but because a lot of cloud is migrating on site to off site, and so they have to go on site to talk about that. Really strange. Didn't expect that. But I also might be wrong. That's just one person's opinion. But but yeah. So how do you prep for the industry, Jack?
Awesome. Yeah. Excuse me. All right. Let's jump into that. So obviously, you guys are all making a pretty great step for just prepping to do something in the industry just by being interested in it, coming to these kinds of meetings. Presumably trying to take something away. For the hour a week you get throughout the semester to focus on this kind of security stuff. There's 3 main points that we put onto this slide for what's important for finding a role in the industry. You've got your technical skills, you've got your soft skills, and then the so eloquently named beer test of would I sit down and have a beer with this person? I think we break this down a little bit in the next couple slides, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it here. It's just
I'll make a point on the beer test because we didn't get to that. It's not a literal I'm going to drink with you. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's more of just show your personality. You know, your personality is a really important thing in just kind of consulting in general. But regardless of whether or not you want to go into consulting, make sure that your personality is something that you include. You know, we don't want to hang out with this stoic person that is only business. Like, you know, we're all normal people as well, and we want you to be the same thing as well. And so the beer test is more of a metaphor of like, are you a good person? Let your personality flow, both in interviews, in talking with us at the career fair. That's actually really, really important to us. But I'll let you take it
To
away.
further clarify with that point, Ellis, really all that means, in my opinion, when I'm talking with people, is have hobbies, right? I mean, there's stuff outside of computers. Some people really like computers, and that's awesome. I'm all for that. I really like computers too. But, you know, just don't be afraid, I should say. If you do have a hobby, don't be afraid to mention that, right? Or to include that as a part of the more complete version of yourself. You know, we've got guys that are really into skiing. We had some folks that are really into rock climbing, you know, so that's all really that means.
Yeah. Have a personality. We're all people.
Yep. So moving on to the idea of technical skills, the stuff that I'm sure you're all at least got some familiarity with some of the things on this slide here. Obviously, you've got these cyber defense competitions at Iowa State. Go to them, participate in them, you know, win them, come back after you've graduated to red team them. Go to the, you know, even if you have a really busy semester and you know can't be bothered to you know actually you know it takes time to blue team it, you know, go volunteer and do green team for, you know, a couple hours on Saturday afternoon, and you know you'll still end up learning a fair bit just from, you know, being in that environment and, you know, finding out, you know, you're just learning about what it takes to actually stand up these systems and make them secure. You've got all kinds of great websites like Hack the Box, where you can go and just, you know, mess around with some systems in a sandbox that are, you know, pre-configured to be vulnerable in very specific ways. That'll teach you how to break into them, which is a good bit of fun. VulnHub, similar, but that one is the crowdsourced version where lots of people can just go out and upload their own ISOs of, you know, hey, here's a server that's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Download this, throw it into your virtualization solution of choice, and then try and break in, get the root flags. Pen Test Academy, bugbountyhunter.com, stuff like that. You know, there's, if you Google, you know, how to get into security or hacking or InfoSec or whatever, you're going to find, you know, lots of much more exhaustive lists of, you know, the dozens upon dozens, you know, hundreds of resources out there that are geared to help you stand up your technical skills. And obviously this is, you know, a massive field, right? Like we talked about how there's different subsets and specialities, you know, the kind of security testing we do. You know, you don't burn yourself out trying to become, you know, amazing at all of these things. You know, there's, you know, find what's interesting and just play around with that, have fun, you know, just be curious. If there's certain things that stand out to you as like, oh, I really want to get into reverse engineering, then by all means go for it. If you really like web apps, go for it. You know, if you're someone who really likes the idea of social engineering and physical security, that there's a ton of great research or a ton of great resources out there for you to learn from. You know, don't burn yourself out trying to, you know, figure out how to bypass web app firewalls if you hate doing it and you'd rather you know, learn some more interesting security stuff. It's a big field, a lot of room for everybody. And then this last bullet point, if you are trying to do technical stuff with, you know, there's, like we talked about earlier, when it comes to tool development, you know, that is something that we encourage, that is just good for you to do in general. So, you know, if you have something that you want to try and write a tool for, that's great. If you've got some time, go find some, you know, exploit code that gets released online, tear it apart, learn how it works, go find somebody else's tool, just take it apart, make it better, contribute to the community, or not, just do it for your own betterment. I mean, there's, you know, you got a lot of great resources out there to mess around with. So by all means, go for it. Soft skills, you've got, you know, like we talked about earlier, communication, being able to work with a team, being able to communicate with your clients, you know, pretty important stuff. A great way to get into that is, you know, joining clubs, getting into leadership positions, get to, you know, put yourself in places where you're going to have to work with other people, solve some problems, especially non-security or non-technical things. I mean, if you know, on campus, if you're a freshman or sophomore who's, you know, getting involved in a dorm floor cabinet or something like that, like there's, you know, it's a good ways to get in front of people, get used to, building up some of those communication skills, and as we discussed earlier, building up a personality outside of technical security stuff. I mean, if you really do love technical security things, and that's what you want to do all day at work, and you want to come home and keep hacking on stuff, and that's awesome. If you want to leave work and go fishing, then by all means join the Iowa State Angling Club or whatever, and talk to people there about that. It's you've got lots of fun options out there. Anyway, as our friends at Offensive Security say, try harder. Beautiful, like Microsoft Office 2003 word art. Remember that.
The big thing about the mindset is not literally you need to try harder every day, but it's more of a mindset to keep improving, because our field changes so quickly that for the most part, you kind of have to be able to adapt and learn very quickly. And that passion is something that we and everyone else, every employer that you'll ever look for is going to be looking at. And so being able to show and talk about that mindset and that passion is really important. So
that's a good way to put it.
Yep. So yeah, that's pretty much it. These are just a couple other good resources to, actually practice your skills and do all of that. But, we'll give you guys the slides so you guys can look through all of this yourself and, make sure that you guys have everything you want. But now we're at the last part, questions. There have been a lot of great questions throughout this. And so, is there anything that you guys, want to ask us, just about consulting, about how to talk to employers at a career fair or anything like that? This is fair game. This is anything goes. I'm also going to stop sharing so I can read the chat.
Well, I suppose I can kick off the questions, although I'm afraid my stuff's going to be a little bit more specific to RSM, considering I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do for the internship this summer. Like, what type of operating systems are you guys using?
I mean, like, the basic is Kali Linux. We're typically issued 2 laptops. We have our standard firm laptop that has email, chats, etc. That just runs, Windows 10. We typically don't do any testing off of that, but that's up to your own discretion. We're also issued a second testing laptop. That's just basically your job is to hack stuff. How do you want to do that? And so you can run Arch, you can run Debian, you can run Python or Ubuntu, you can run Python. You can run pretty much anything you want on it. It's completely up to you, customizable. Yeah.
To address this question in chat about what programming languages you should be familiar with, I think the default answer that everyone throws out is going to be Python, just right off the bat, since that's what it seems the vast majority of tools get written in. It's something that is fairly versatile, fairly easy to understand, pretty easy to hack on, and a lot of people who are releasing stuff on Twitter or releasing tools that we use on a daily basis write those in Python. Java and assembly are interesting choices to throw out there. I haven't written a line of Java or assembly since I graduated, so I'm not going to recommend those. If Dave or Ellis wants to say that they've been writing tools in assembly, then they can certainly jump in and say that. But
like at the end of the day, the key word in that question is the word should. Like, you don't need to have a specific set of programming languages that you're proficient in to start with. Like, everyone has their own flavor. Like, for instance, I'm a big programmer of Python. Dave operates a lot in C#. Jacob Moody operates a lot in Go. It's really just kind of up to you. The point is that, you have something that you're proficient in, that if you wanted to automate something or develop a tool, you have the ability to do that. It's really just a familiarity with that and the willingness to adapt yourself. So I'm not great at C#, but I'm working on it because I want to code in C#. And so there really isn't a programming language that you should be familiar with, but, we do have recommendations on popular ones. But, as long as you have the programming skills and the ability to adapt, you're fine.
And sometimes hipster languages are better because nobody writes detections for them. So if you want to do something weird in like F# or something, it's like, cool, go for it, man. More power to you using a hipster language. Oh, I wrote this offensive security tool in Perl. It's like, cool, that's awesome. I have no clue what this code means, but it works. Good with me. One other thing that nobody mentioned that's really important is just general, like I would say bash/command line knowledge in Linux is gigantic. I mean, that's probably more than any Python or C#. Just knowing how to operate within your own terminal environment is very important.
Yep.
A large amount of the there's been a lot of quality of life improvements that I've just adopted throughout my time working here, and honestly as a student too. It just came from bash one-liners that I'm not great at them. They look gross as hell, but it strings together 8 commands that magically turn what would have been like a long and annoying task for me into something where I just reuse this one script every day to do whatever it is. But yeah, that bash is a good point there.
Bash is huge. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Good point, Dave. Any other questions?
Are you guys able to do like a bug bounty hunting work while working at RSM?
Yeah. I know that there are a couple people based out of the Des Moines office who have made over $1,000 just doing bug bounties on the weekends. It depends on your specialty. For example, Jack and I and Dave, none of us really touch web apps. It's not really our specialty, so we don't do it. But we have web app testers who, in their free time, they either want to keep testing or they want to make some money, etc. And so, yeah, they go and do bug bounties in their free time. It's just kind of, up to your preference. If you want to do it in your free time, that's totally fair. We encourage it. It improves your skills. So at the end of the day, ends up being good.
Wasn't sure if there was some sort of non-compete or something.
Dave, you might have to answer that, but I could imagine that, like, if you were testing, like doing bug bounties against a client of yours, I could see that being a conflict of interest. But I think in general, as long as, we're not already servicing them for a web app, the big thing would be, for example, if you do a web app test for a company and then you just don't report anything and then go report them as bug bounties, well, that's an issue. But I think in general we don't. But like I said, that would have to be a conversation that I don't know.
No, yeah, you're pretty much right on that, Alex. It's really, at the end of the day, with a bug bounty, you're not like a salary employee of another organization or anything. You're just like kind of doing freelance work. So as long as RSM specifically does not have any issues with that specific client in terms of the types of work that are applicable or things that you can do, which would be, that's all accessible once you're an employee, you can get that info. But as long as it's not like a disallowed service for that client, I don't think that would be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? We're nearing 5, and I'm certainly willing to stay on longer. It also looks like we have a couple new people to the chat, so hi to you all. You kind of joined at the tail end here. We're at the Q&A section, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Engineering career services, I think, is want to do a little presentation on prepping for the career fair, which I'm imagining is what these guys are coming in for.
That makes sense. Any other questions about anything at all?
So does what you guys do fall under infrastructure also? Since like I'm an MIS major, not an engineering major like everybody else, I want to try to go the infrastructure route. Is that anything? Do you guys do some of that along with security also?
Yeah. That's one I can take. So actually, I graduated undergrad, and again, sorry for this baby sitting on my lap, but I graduated undergrad with an MIS degree, and I've been working here, kind of moving. I started in infrastructure, so basically, one sec here.
Struggles of having a baby on your lap.
Yeah, I've got a 11-and-a-half-month-old baby. She's almost 1, but she loves talking and being loud and hitting keyboards, and also watching YouTube videos of baby nursery rhymes in the background. So anyways, Yeah, my path, I did start MIS. That was my undergrad. And when I started at RSM, we have a whole nother group, and I don't think we hit on this too much, but RSM is much broader than just security testing, right? We have a gigantic consulting department that does all different types of consulting, technology, non-technology, et cetera. When I started in our technology consulting practice doing basically like outsourced IT work, where think you're a smaller, medium-sized business, you don't want to pay for your own IT staff, so you pay RSM, they come in, they do your IT for you. That's kind of where I started, and it really helped me learn a lot about Active Directory, which is really my main focus area from an offensive security perspective now. That's what I love doing, just like seeing how I can mess with Active Directory to give myself more privileges than I should. But I mean, that was kind of my background. So absolutely, that's a very valid career path. That's literally exactly what I did. Just kind of slowly moved my way into security testing over time, and have been doing it for full time now for about the past 6 years or so. Yeah.